raw and living fruits, vegetables, seeds, nuts, herbs, and spice. It is totally out of sync with any divine reasoning to think that we're going to be able to consume depleted and devitalized energy and cause our brain to function at an optimum level. And right now we need super optimum thinking.
I bring you welcome to all those spirits who are present, aware and conscious that they're caught up in the stirrings of a changing tide that is more than just the movements of earth, wind, rain, and sun, a changing tide that was prophesied to be as it is before the coming of a fall into a consciousness that we see manifesting. The High Priest Kwatamani is a prophetic returning as a voice of divine reasoning that is so sorely needed in response to a call from the mothers for the children who are lost and astray, in response to a call from those beings who are in fits of confusion, in the agonizing pains of working to connect. The High Priest Kwatamani is a connector. I bring you greetings from the Kwatamani Royal Sisterhood, Kwahima, the entire Kwatamani Royal family, the Kwatamani Tribal Community Order. High Priest Kwatamani, Supreme Spiritual Leader, Soothsayer, Soul Seer. We've been waiting to hear from the High Priest Kwatamani.
First and foremost, we need to know who we are. And in order for us to know who we are, we must have a base and foundation of comprehension. Are we seen? Are we unseen? We've been given a lot of different kinds of delusions, illusions, and fantasies of grandeur, and not being really interested in trying to figure out anybody's fantasy, con game, and other different kind of delusionary happenings, and then beginning to realize who we are as beings and how we relate to earth, wind, rain, and sun. And within that, what our place and relationship is within the circle of life. The circle of life is where we start. What is and should be most clear to each and every one of us is that we are a soul being, a vibrant life soul being. Let's start it like this. We immensely gathered as molecular beings. That is, we transformed from an energy source of life, masculine and feminine, into an energy source of life, he and she. I want to make sure that we speak simple. The reason that I want to do that is because for a while, it's been quite a while since I've actually had the vibrational feeling of wanting to come back into the West, into what we'll call the New Babylon system, or New Rome, or the USA. One of the reasons is because it's so pleasant and pleasing being within a tropical rainforest environment. And within that, get the feeling of what our ancestral beings must have been like, how we must have felt, the sense of joy, thanks, praise, and appreciation that we had to have had for each other, and the respect that we had to have for the environment, the earth, the trees, and why for millions of years, and then if we say in tens of thousands of years, and with lots of ruins and findings and artifacts and statements of our presence now being clearly comprehended for those who were ignorant of our comprehension of our being, seeing clearly that we had organized infrastructures that respected earth, wind, rain, and sun as a top priority, while also living a life holding clean. Now, in knowing that that is where we came from an environmental factor of circumstances where the tree of life is our basic and essential expression. As children of the tree of life, that is, children divine of the sun, interrelating within our birthplace on earth, therefore honoring the tree of life and all living things thereof, it became very simple for us to comprehend what our role and responsibilities were on the earth. And we knew that how we have to relate to each other would be a statement, a definition of our own being. And that if we interrelated with another in disorder, it was a statement of disorder within he or she, that being. And where we're at on the planet today is a statement of disorder, a statement of disconnection from the circle of life. Within the circle of life, concept, comprehension, understanding, reality. If we do not honor earth, wind, and rain and sun, we have totally disregarded our own being, because we are a sum total of earth, wind, rain, and sun. Earth, our physical presentation; wind, our breath of life; rain, the water that runs in and through our body, our blood; sun, the solar radiation that causes that heartbeat to keep a 98.6 within our temple, and also that interrelates that solar experience up there with this spot inside of our head that interconnect and send signals and wavelengths into our being that actually feeds our intelligence, if we are doing what we're supposed to do as herbivores, as tree-based beings. We're not carnivorous. It is not our nature. We are not flesh consumers. That is a curse against our being. It's a curse against our internal organs. It's a curse against our very vital element called the colon. It's a curse against all of the factors of our being, especially the brain, because the body is not able, regardless of what anyone says, to assimilate that information and to transfer it into the body to be used for higher peace, for higher conscious reasoning. What it will do, if you consume of those particular elements that are taboo for you as a fruit, vegetable, seed, and nut consuming being, you will then become a state of disorder. That state of disorder producing what we see manifesting around us on a daily basis. Predatorial mindsets. No respect for the other being. Everyone on the hunt, trying to see who they can see, search, conquer, and control. The vibration becomes, as Julius Caesar once said, I came, I saw, I conquered. And all is fair in love and war. Eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. Within the circle of life, the one thing that is clear and has to become clear, must be clear to each and every one of us. There is no death within the circle of life. Many things that have been said and misinterpreted by individuals who had no comprehension of what it was that was going on, has been an interpretation, misinterpretation about what is it meant by you have eternal life. Various other kinds of expressions that have been totally taken out of context with whole life reality, and then transmitted into some predatory hunting and herding vibration of religion. And those predatory hunting and herding vibrations of religion determines this, there are some stories that we must relate to. What we've done in a recent video, or should we say, in a recent album, is to take time and do something unique in hopes that we'll be able to connect certain beings with their inner essence. But this is what we're saying. What has occurred is that there were certain things taken from some of the holy texts, we call them the pyramid texts, and other kinds of ruins and findings that have begun to reveal the massive amount of just ridiculous disruption and disturbance, and ridiculous dishonesty, ridiculous deception, ridiculous lies. The various things that were taken out of it, misinterpreted, midrashed the wrong way and not comprehending, or midrashed for a comprehension to bless those who were trying to bring forward whatever it is to serve one's own best interest, and doing so to this day. The misinterpretation has endangered our entire planet. The entire earth is now set at a state where we could easily reach crisis in a moment's notice, because huge buildings are left burning up fuel with nobody in them, because various individuals have a desire to control rainforest regions and turn them into cattle herding pastures, because certain beings have within them a conceptual reality of good and evil. And of course, good is considered to be magnificent and evil, certain, depending on who has the swiftest ability to kill, maim, conquer, and destroy. Who has the swiftest ability to dominate and control determines what's good and evil. Whereas, when we look at the supreme elements and essence of life, we begin to comprehend what is meant by the tree of life within our ancient culture. That is to say, that once you begin to get the knowledge of life, once you begin to comprehend earth, wind, rain, and sun, then there's no need for any kind of crisscross evaluations of good and evil. It becomes very clear that if you are within the element and the essence of life, and you choose to uphold and honor your living presence, then you must obey divine order. You must obey universal law. Whereas within the concept of good and evil, depends on how big your club is, depends on how cunning your rap is, depending on how easy it is for you to persuade, dominate, and control that other being that you're seeking to dominate and control, to serve your best interest, to satisfy your ego for the moment. And then the worst case scenario of that is, if your ego gets satisfied and there are offsprings born, and you find out that your ego trip was a negative, destructive trip for others, and the offsprings who've come there, and they've seen that, and they begin to see that as good, now you have one heck of a vibration, because you had a terrible evil that was declared as good and pushed upon others as good, and now you have to find ways and means to get that evil off. And in doing so, there are many invested in that evil. And those who are invested in that evil have absolutely no desire to switch what is going on. And so, evil becomes good. Just simply a right of the pen, simply a political, social, economic, or religious statement thereof, and the evil becomes good. And the good then becomes evil. The characteristics of masculine and feminine energy begins to be condemned or glorified based upon the value of he or she who has the swiftest ability to dominate and control over others. There's no more regard or respect for universal order, divine law. There's no respect for earth, wind, rain, and sun. This is the scenario. After being out of the West for quite a while, the Wild West, and being in the jungle for a consistent basis of time, and setting up a major focal point of the generation next, with the top priority of dealing with establishing the natural and innate order of our being, and then coming out last week when flying in after being out for a while and feeling a sense of being quiet and still, and flying in, coming into the Big Apple, smelling the fumes, hearing the chaos, feeling the disrespect for each other going on just like a norm. I began to really get into the gut about it, to realize that, wow, the deterioration continues to diminish. Another generation has now taken this step, and that generation that was under them have taken that step, and then those who were there have taken this step, and then no eldership. Everyone to each his and her own. Every man, he or whatever he or she may be, for his or her own. And God, which everybody likes to call on, is for us all. And of course that God is determined by who has the swiftest ability to dominate and control. And the declaration of that and righteousness is determined by the persuasion of the controller, with no respect for universal order, no respect for divine law. So it's okay to slaughter a goat or a sheep or a cow. It's okay, as long as it's halal or kosher or some other term that somebody fabricate in their mind to justify their act against divine law and universal order. It becomes okay. It becomes okay to declare that you are fish and fowl vegetarian when a fish or a fowl is not a vegetable. It becomes okay. So, I mean, and if you have a point of reason to challenge that, then you become evil. Quickly you become evil. You're the devil. Sort of like Eve, if anybody remember that story. Young sister hadn't even been named yet. She didn't even know what was going on. She was told that if you eat, you will die the moment you eat it, quote unquote. She met up with a gentleman in the rainforest, in the garden that sat outside of the within what is clearly and obviously within the Fertile Crescent, and clearly and obviously certain other happenings, since there were invasions and occurrences that had happened and takeovers and other kinds of things by weapon-consuming, hunting, herding cultures, and recognizing clearly before anybody get any ideas that we are all one family, of man, he and she, and being very clear about that and stating in fact that just because we have different color tones and tints and etc., that is not the distinction of our responsibilities to each other. We must hold a total responsibility to each other within the circle of life. However, what has occurred is a good and evil concept. And in that good and evil concept, there's been justifications and rationalized as to why. And this poor young sister that we're talking about, Eve, she get cursed to hell because she was told, you won't die, to eat a fruit. Somebody's deceived you. And because she ate the fruit, and did she die? Anybody, did she die?
No.
This sister didn't drop dead. Somebody told her A What do you call that? They say, wow, how Priest Kwatamani, you too old, man. You mess with people's religion. No, I'm not. I'm talking about universal order and divine law. No, she did not drop dead. And then it became another switch-wash and change of it for the purpose of justifying one's own purpose. We're talking about warlords. The Lord, the landlord, the overlord, the controller. And the warlords didn't play. And the bottom line of it is, all of a sudden, a new order was declared. Now it became okay for man, he and she, to eat flesh, to kill and to slaughter. I say, what happened? What happened to our reasoning? It becomes okay. And then by it becoming okay, it becomes okay to take people's other land, get that gold and them diamonds and onyx stones. Those, they're good. And we get into the good and evil vibration. Those people over there, they're evil. These here, they're good. And that's the breeding of total chaos. And chaos within ancient Kemetic teachings was the energy of Set. Set, Setic, Satan, the lower and lesser nature of the he and she of man. And what has happened is the energy, which is the base of our existence, has gained domination and control because of the massive amount of shape-shifting deceptions, because of the massive amount of weapons and the massive amount of toxic insanity from the consumption of toxic, dead, devitalized, and depleted food substances, and then taking that depleted brain, malnourished brain, as the thinking process that's going to determine the various acts that's going to go on upon this earth. And you create a blood-sucking predator. You create a virus, like plague, kind of hairworm. Anyone know what a hairworm is? A hairworm is a little creature. You see it in the rainforest. It's a real skinny little creature. It gets inside of certain little grasshoppers, praying mantises, and then you see a creature who don't swim, who's not organized to do certain things. You see the bees flying and see water and swim, fly them down and drown. And they say, wow, he was suicidal, or something must have happened. The hairworm gets inside of that creature and it takes control, and the hairworm wants water. But this creature, it is totally against the nature of that creature. Are you feeling that? Well, let's keep going. The nature of a tree-based consumer is higher peace. It's actually instrumental in your being, because you have to stay in contact and in relationship to earth, wind, rain, and sun in a higher order of being in order to exist. And in order to exist, it is your duty, divine obligation, responsibility to make sure that the trees are kept in order, because you recognize and honor and respect the breath of life. You make sure that the trees are in order because you know you need the whole life's nourishment of the fruits of those trees. Whereas if you're in a state of chaos and disorder, it does not matter. It does not matter at all, because you just look for something to prey on. Predators prey. And long as there's something to prey on, you're okay. And if what you do is totally opposite of the nature, the natural and innate state of being of that you prey on, that's not relevant to you. The only thing that's relevant is that you are the top dog. You're the prey consumer. You are the predator that won. And that's where we're at. As I begin to walk around and to see that, wow, this thing is playing out more viciously than ever before. Usually, in coming in, we look and we sense and we feel, for that sacred few, try to leave some lessons, try to learn some lessons, get some blessings, and try to get a greater sense of essence in the divine union of one. That's what tree-based beings do. You know that earth, wind, rain, and sun is what you are, and you know that you are that earth, wind, rain, and sun, and as a result, you know that you must hold honor and respect for clean and wholesome water, that you must do all that you can to help in the process of fresh air, and you know that the trees produce the elements that's necessary for you to have fresh air, with the leaves that's being produced, the leaves that fall to the ground that help fertilize the soil, and it becomes a circle of life, and you start to honor that circle of life because you are part of that circle of life, and you are eternal life. You begin to comprehend through that process that you are simply a part of that same element as that tree or any other living matter, and that as such, when you depart the earth, you only depart as a body that emerged back into your coming back again. Another misinterpretation by the masters of deception. There are many who've been waiting around, and I hope no one get offended. I'm just speaking divine law and universal order. And if it's not a fact, did Eve eat the apple and drop dead? Then you answer that within you. The whole point is there are many who are waiting for Jesus to return to save their soul from sin. And the whole point is, instead of looking and holding honor to earth, wind, rain, and sun and these trees, and hold the air to be clean and the water, just filthy everything up and then quickly have a rationalization or justification to say, waiting for the Savior, the Lord. And it's like total insanity, pale vanity, totally out of sync with our natural innate state of being as man, he, and she. And again, I say very clearly, we all have a responsibility as a family unit of man, he, and she to look out for each other, to respect each other, to honor each other's being and presence, regardless of skin tone, texture, and etc. And as a result of that, the masters of deception have taken that and took it into a whole oppositional state. And the major tool used to keep each and every one of us in a state of toxic disorder and chaos is race, sex, and religion. Tools of war, tools of spiritual war. You take and divide individuals up by as many categories as you can, because the law of the predator is divide and conquer. And if we're dealing with that mindset, there's absolutely no way for anything to occur except what has been stated by prophecy to occur of all of those who follow that pathway. Armageddon, apocalypse, doom and gloom. And you see it coming and smell it in the air. You can smell it by the rotten funk of the air, the oxygen that you got to breathe. You can tell it and smell it by the nature of the various food that you eat that's no longer food, that becomes synthetic and artificial happenings. You can tell it by the brain, the mind that wanders around trying to see who they can conquer and control to satisfy their ego, feeling insecure and puffing up with cocky arrogance as though they have it going on. You can tell it by the way a person walks. You can hear it off of their energy. That is, if you're in tune with life. And if you're not, you think your facade is getting over. This is where we're at. But this is not where we are supposed to be. Where we must be should be clear by now. If you've listened to the little ways that Diana have tried to put the dots and puzzles together for you. And I say try because I can't determine what you've gotten. I can determine what has been divinely required for I to bring forward to you. It should be very clear. And number one, man, he, and she tree-based consumers. That the tree of life is the essence of our being. Tree-based consumers. The tree of life, the essence of our being. Number 2, which is prior even to the number 1, but I'm going to put them in an order of comprehension. Number 2, it is impossible that we came any other way other than in the divine union of one of masculine and feminine energy. The proof is in the pudding. We're still coming the way we came. The divine union of masculine and feminine energy. Therefore, there is absolutely no way that monotheism has anything to do with our presence upon this earth. That the only thing monotheism has something to do with is the statement of domination and control by some warlord who had enough swift ability to kill, maim, conquer, squash you, dominate and control you, and force you through every means that possible to honor, worship, and obey. And that honor and worshiping and obeying have absolutely nothing to do with divine order or universal law. So, tree-based consumers, birthed from masculine and feminine energy, then we have another obligation within that. That is that the essence of all that we are, the mighty and majestic beings that we are, we have a divine duty, obligation, responsibility, and universal law, divine order, to go forward and multiply universal law and divine order. Simple and basic. So therefore, we become really simple and basic. Divine consumption, our divine duty, natural and innate obligation to consume of the fruits of the tree of life, raw and living fruits, vegetables, seeds, nuts, herbs, and spice. It is totally out of sync with any divine reasoning to think that we're going to be able to consume depleted and devitalized energy and cause our brain to function at an optimum level. And right now we need super optimum thinking. Divine union of masculine and feminine energy. There is absolutely no way that we can sit and profess any sense of spirit conscious or higher conscious intelligence and reasoning if we can't even deal with the basis of comprehending that we are emergence of masculine and feminine energy in union, and that union in divine order is the respect of mother and father, the respect of masculine and feminine, the respect of he and she at its most high state of being. And at that point we'll begin to comprehend the most supreme, seen and unseen ancestral spirit presence of masculine and feminine energy, and cease the fabrications and the deceptions of fantasies, delusions, and delusion that keep us locked into the good and evil deceptive plan. And number 3, that once we comprehend our natural and innate duty, obligation, responsibility to each other as in how we consume and the relationships that we must have and maintain for that consumption to stay in divine order, the next thing that we have a divine duty and obligation to do is to go forward and multiply that in every offspring and vibration of our thinking and reasoning. This touched my heart. So if my words start to jump out too fast, that means my brain is moving too fast to my mouth. My lips, I want to make sure that they stay slow enough so that you can comprehend what I'm saying. Because I get the feeling this, because it's real. And the deal is, if we don't go forward and multiply this into every offspring and vibration, then we are cursing our being as man, he, and she. So then you can begin to see divine order and universal law at work. And all of these factors are totally abandoned for sexual relationships. Abandoned for some momentary enthusiasm or pleasure, and the hurt and the harm put on another being because somebody wants to get their ego rubbed for a minute based upon values that are totally out of sync with universal order and divine law. Someone decides whatever they want to do for the moment because good is simply saying that, well, you know, that's just the norm. The norm is good. The abnormal is evil. And even if the abnormal is the divine order of things, that's not common, so it's evil. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with eating a little of this? I mean, the lion eat goats. What's wrong with that? It gets to be a total misinterpretation of living energy. A total misinterpretation of the absolute fact. You're not a lion. That you are not a predator through your anatomy. That your whole structure is divinely designed in a whole different order. That's why you have come to be who you are in the first place. And it's only now that the degradation and the disrespect of that order, that divine, natural, innate state of being, it is only because of that disrespect that you see this downward spiral, where the overflow, the ego-driven self now dominates the thinking, reasoning, and action. And that people become very uncomfortable and insecure if they don't feel like their plan, their thoughts is what's received by someone. And that it don't have anything to do with divine order or universal law. But what they perceive as good and what the social order that they align with conceive as evil. And so long as it's a common, for the common good, it has nothing to do with the earth, the wind, and rain and sun. So it could be for the common good to go out to the rainforest and rape the land and slaughter and cut all the trees down. Because that's what the common good is. And put Walmarts and other marts and tow marts and gift shops and all over there, and then get in a situation like, wow, it's getting hard to breathe. Yeah. And in that hard to breathe process, what happens is that life becomes so precious and valuable when you know that you're at the edge. But the only thing is divine law and universal order remains constant. Truth and consequence. You cannot hurry and put a seed, put it in the ground, and that tree gonna grow up and produce oxygen and etc. It's not gonna happen like that. You got to work within the divine law of universal order. And you have to maintain that in order for living energy, our presence, to continue to exist. We're in a critical state right now. And it's time for a different kind of thinking and reasoning. And there's a tremendous amount of damage. And there's so many who are not able to think their way out of the back door or the front. And they're in control. They're making decisions for your lives. And it's the generation next that will suffer the most. It is the generation next that will not be able to breathe good by someone who bought the biggest car they could buy, the biggest house, the biggest air conditioner, dropped dead. And all the trees and the water is dirty, and the air is filthy and dirty, and the generation next is left to suffer the consequences. We got to think future. We got to think forward. We got to think divine law. We got to think universal order. We got to think circle of life. We got to think supreme truth. We have a few more minutes. We're going to see if there's any questions quickly, and then we're going to close down so that you can get a chance, if you have a desire, to go and get some supreme truth and eat some of that food that's still there, if there's some that's still there. That raw and living, uncooked, unadulterated fruits, vegetables, seeds, and nuts that we have consistently kept present and available, and I personally, for 50 years, to make sure that resurrection of the divine children of the sun occur. And we're going to do that, come hell or high water. And we invite each and every one of you to join in that process. Start within your own being, and then go forward and multiply that into every offspring and vibration. Any questions?
I'd like to ask, do you see any awakening amongst the people? Do you feel there is some awakening happening on this earth, all over the earth?
I honestly and sincerely see awakening. Otherwise, I would not come out here. I'd stay up. Woo! I'd be so far back in.
And we'll be with you.
Well, then that's the awakening. You see? That's what I see. I see that there are a few who's just feeling just what you're feeling. You know what's being said is absolute truth. And you see it. And that sacred few have enough sense to say, we better get somewhere where there's some clean water and air. We better get somewhere where we can do this instead of spending a lot of time talking rhetoric. You get some talking about, it's going to be a revolution. Rebel what? In a desert? With no trees? No clean water? No food to eat? You only going to rather die. And life is for the living. So yes, I see a tremendous amount of.
And how can people help themselves to awaken? Meditation, prayer, eating better foods? What do you see as a help to people to wake up?
Well,
for all of us to wake up.
Well, sweetheart, the first thing is that we must begin to look at some supreme truth and stop following this master deception that's laid in us to keep everyone scattered and chattered in all different kind of ways. We must first realize that we're one family. We must get past this master deception of race, religion, and sex. And then within that, we must comprehend divine law. In that divine law, we must comprehend that there was energies that got us out of sync. We call it set. And then if you understand that out of sync vibration, that vibration that some people call Satan, but then they worship it. And those who are declaring themselves religious, who are going to all the various places and bowing and all that, they're master worshipers of it because you worship by your energy, the energy that you put out. The energy that you put out determines what your worship is, no matter what you got to say with your words. So based upon that, I say we begin to master consuming whole life energy, mentally, physically, and spiritually. Then we become whole life energy, mentally, physically, and spiritually. Do that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
If we don't do that, whatever we're consuming, no matter what game of good and evil you want to play, if you consume in dead, devitalized, and depleted energy, your thoughts and your reasonings and your actions are going to be dead, devitalized, and depleted. As was said in the ancient pyramid texts, you are simply what you eat. This was said thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago, not yesterday. And it remains constant. It is divine law. So I see a lot of hope. I see resurrection every day. I see spirits right now more than ever before. Because the whole thing is for us to know what's truth and to see and realize that it's there so we can see the mirage and the illusion and delusion. And then you have a decision, are you going to go that way or are you going to turn around? I see those who are saying, I don't want it. And those are the resurrection seeds. Anyone else that we prepared?
Yes. This is R from Ready for R and Ready for Real Food. You and I, we met 2 days ago, and what you're saying is aligned with exactly what I'm saying in regards to consuming life, in regards to fruits and raw food. I'd like to know more about your mission in Belize. Are you just staying there because it's nice weather, or is there a specific mission that others can assist with, or how does that work?
Well, it is definitely more than the weather. The truth and reality is there are only 2 rainforests left in the Western Hemisphere. And it happens that we are in the Western Hemisphere. And so since we're in the Western Hemisphere, we must function from where we're at. Secondly, the ancestral DNA lineage says very clearly that we must be within a tropical environment. And thirdly, there's something called global warming, in case did nobody know about it, that's happening. And if you're in a global warming situation and you don't have any trees, I'm going to tell anybody straight, your butt going to burn. Your butt going to burn.
Yeah, right.
Your behind and everything else of you. Common sense.
Right.
And you ain't going to, the air conditioners are not going to work. And so the sooner we begin to realize this and get busy, this year, what we did within the Kwatamani Family Community Order. We planted over 5,000 trees. We have a law. They say that, "High priest, you're so strict." That's what people say outside. You can't cut a tree down unless the tree is already prepared to grow in place of it. Our ancestors did this for thousands and thousands of years. That's why we had rainforest. That's why we met rainforests. And we must use some common sense reasoning. So the whole focus is we need the sacred few. These are the places that sacred few have to gather. And they get to be diminishing. This festival, this gathering has been going on for a long time and others like that. But it's diminishing because those who have held certain responsibilities, they've dropped, they've died. They didn't give it to their children. They didn't give it to the next generation. And so it gets to be a big gap. We have to cease those gaps. And the only way we're going to be able to do that is through community, through divine, social, economic, family, community orders. And we have to cease the idea of all these fragmentation and sub-fragmentation. If it's supreme truth, it's going to be supreme truth. And each and every community who comprehends supreme truth and divine order and universal law, are they going to be in sync with it? And so therefore it's just a matter of family communities functioning in an order and being able to interrelate. We did this for thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years. We've had a fall. The fall was a great lesson. We need to learn our lesson, retrieve our blessings, and get the essence of life back into our existence as man, he, and she. Any other? And by the way, we got our eye on you. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Anyone else?
I read anywhere in 2050 human will arrive at that level of knowledge and approaching the true, like to don't eat any more meat at that time. Do you think if this is possible, and it is probably, and it is a result of global warming, if it is global warming, or it is a result of the conscious only? What do you think?
Well, it all play a part. You see, even the global warming has something to do with our consciousness and how we're dealing and relating to divine order and universal law. See, none of this is new. We've had global changes for millions of years. Yeah, so none of it is new. It goes, it comes. And there was a period of time that we had an unfortunate occurrence, and that takes a whole nother presentation. But out of that, we have some learnings to do. We have some lessons to get, and we must do it. But we have to do it as a collective and comprehend. We must go past the games of division and conquest. So what has happened in very quick terms is this. The universe has now set order. Nature, which is only the elements of earth, wind, rain, and sun, cannot tolerate disobedience and disorder. And that's what's happening. And so the obedient ones are not going to be some 144 who get on ships and go somewhere. Maddening insanity. What's going to happen is those who get up and get to the soil and begin to live now, so that whatever circumstances happen, you're already acclimated. It's virtually impossible to think that you're going to sit up in a place and all of a sudden it gets super hot one day and don't turn cool no more, and you're going to be all right. You can hurry up and go do this or that. All right. We also have other orders within the divine socioeconomic family community. Although I'm High Priest Kwatamani, we're birthed from the Mother Spirit. And Mama says time to go. And I have enough sense to know that Mama is the first teacher. And as soon as we get that sense, we're going to be all right. Because then, as fathers, we can give divine guidance and protection and respect divine law and universal order. So I'm going to do that and prepare to depart. Because I do not want to be out of sync with the Mother Spirit. I say supreme thanks, praise, and appreciation to each and every one of you. I feel your energies in here. It's a beautiful energy that's collected in here. You can feel it. Those who wasn't able, you can see. I mean, it's just something that, and it's okay. It's all right, because what has to happen is we have to weed through, and I don't mean we have to weed through to get to the sacred few. We got to weed through to get to the sacred few. Thank you all very much. Much love.